Hey everyone, my name's Rochelle Melander. I am the author of Level Up and Mightier Than the Sword, among other books. For me, happiness is really learning something. So if I'm anxious and my limbic system is going crazy, engaging that prefrontal cortex and learning something will help me calm down and feel happier in the moment.
Ooh, so what are you learning these days, Rochelle?
I am learning a lot about science. I'm reading a lot about brood parasites, which like I had never heard of them, but brood parasites are birds that do not build their own nests and do not raise their own young. They drop their eggs in host nests, and sometimes their children are mean. They do horrible things to the other eggs, which is probably not something we want to talk about, but they do anything they can to survive. So they destroy the other eggs so that they remain the sole survivor. And because often they're dropping cowbirds are dropping their and cuckoos are dropping their eggs into the nests of smaller birds. And so these smaller birds have to work very hard to feed these baby cowbirds.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's interesting. So why are you learning that?
Well, this past year I did an artist residency with kids, and I was looking for ways to engage them, especially the little kids. And so I started telling them these stories about brood parasites, and they were really excited. So I thought, oh, I'm going to write a book about it. So I've been reading up on it to learn that. But I try to learn like one or two science things a day. It was not part of my childhood to learn science. I was never interested in science, but I feel like given where we are as a culture, how challenging climate can be, science is the future. And if we can learn more about science and kind of understand our world, that's very helpful. Plus, there's so many fascinating things going on in the world of science right now.
Ooh, so science. So how are you picking up a little bit of science every day? Do you have a book that you have like 365 ways to learn about science, or is there a show that you're watching? How are you doing that?
I read Scientific American, um,
Oh yeah, right on.
and I get their tips every day. So I try to like click on there and do something. I also go to the library and just like go through the science section and pick books. And so I have a bunch of books that come out. And if I'm not learning about science, my other area of interest right now are artists. So I study a lot about artists
Ooh,
and
that's
how they do.
exciting. That's really cool. Well, it sounds like you're leveling up in science and art and all these other things. So, how did you make the decision to level up?
I feel like that is the one, we only have control over ourselves. We don't have control over other people. And so when we decide to level up, so in my book, Level Up, I'm advocating a gameful approach to life. So you kind of think of life as a game, and how can you gather points? How can you give yourself power ups? And learning is a huge power up. Exercise is another power up. Eating well is another power up. So all of these are ways that we level up our lives. And so
Oh,
these are things that I, try to add in drips and drabs in my life as the day goes on.
wow. That's so cool. I didn't know that about you. That's really, really interesting. So, because I've known you for years, I know you as the Right Now coach. You help people write their books, but then, of course, you write your own. So, give me one more area that we can level up our life that maybe we wouldn't think about.
That's a good idea. So one thing that I think we're going to talk about later, but I think is really important is even if you're not a writer, you can level up your mood if you practice journaling. So you don't have to be a writer. You don't have to have any interest in writing professionally. You don't even have to like writing to use journaling as a tool to level up your life. Um, so it is like the easiest, most accessible tool, and the benefits are just extraordinary. So, it's like tiny effort, huge benefit.
Okay, so before we get into how tell me more about the benefits, right? There's a lot of benefits, and I know that, but tell me about some of the big benefits for writing.
So I mean, it's almost like you're gonna say, that just can't be true. It's too good. It improves your mood. It increases your ability to be productive. So it increases your ability to set and achieve goals. It helps you to connect to your dream state. It connects you with your spirituality. It boosts your immune cell activity. If you have surgery, it speeds up your healing. If you have asthma, it can heal you in ways that your medicine can't. Um, it can just increase your general feelings of well-being. It can make you live longer, and it helps you boost your immune cell activity.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, I would say, wow, that seems almost unreal, but I know that you wouldn't tell that to us if you didn't have science behind it. So that's so interesting. So do we have to do I need a blank notebook to write, or do I need a guided journal, or what do I need to journal better?
You don't need anything special. I think that notebook that you just held up that you can get those at this time of year for 10 cents a piece at Target. Um, that's a perfect thing. If you're a person, and there may be people listening to us who are just like freaked out by the idea of journaling, a post-it note or one of those tiny notebooks can be really helpful because it's not so scary. The other thing that I think is really great is your notes feature on your phone. So almost every phone has a notes app. And you can even talk into that. So you could combine your journaling with your walk, and you could say like 3 things you're grateful for as you're walking into your notes app. And if you have it all on the same app, then you have a record of that goes for the whole year. So that's a great tool. I personally like writing by hand because I feel like there's something that happens with our brain when we write by hand. I do a lot of things. This is my mind map for our call, and I do a lot of mind mapping like that. And it just helps me think because I can organize my thoughts on paper. I can kind of see what's going on. But not everybody's a paper person. Some people are digital people. And so if that's what works for you, do that.
That's okay. So no matter how we do it, we should do it. That's really kind of the overarching message here, with a post-it note, with a small notebook, with a big notebook, on your phone. Sometimes I'll do mine on Facebook. I like to share mine, right? I talk about my 3 things, not every day, but 3 things that I'm grateful for. And so I know that helps me get clear on my day. That's usually one of the first things that I do, and that is super helpful. But let's talk about guided journaling, right? Your book Level Up is a guided journal, gamified journal. So explain what that is for people who aren't familiar with that, please.
So a guided journal gives you questions that you can reflect on kind of in a particular order around a central theme. And so Level Up is designed to help people set up a writing or a work practice where they have to do a focused work. It helps them overcome any mindset issues they might have, overcome any blocks they might have, and increase their productivity. And so what I love about Level Up is that you can kind of go and look for the game or the questions that are going to help you. And then it gives you specific prompts. So if you're a person who's really struggling with like writing and you don't know how, you've never been a good writer, you don't like to write, you struggle with it, one of the prompts is to just, take a couple weeks, examine your writing practice, keep a little notebook and just write down what works. What works when you're blocked, what works when you're distracted, what works to help you get started, what works to help you develop ideas, what works to get finished. And then you go back with some journaling questions and really analyze that. And so the exercise gives you data, it gives you questions to analyze it. And that's really helpful because I think one of the things that that happens to people who try to journal for the first time is that their mind just goes blank. And especially if you're a person who talks more clearly than you write, you might have a lot of things to say to a person, but almost nothing to say to yourself when you journal. And that's why a guided journal can be really helpful, because it just gives you questions. And what I like about Level Up is that you can, as a reader, you can just page through it until you find a question that speaks to you, and just work with that. And no questions get old. You can use the same questions over and over again. They hit you differently on different days.
So that book has the prompts, and you can take that then and write in your own journal with that. You don't, I'm guessing you probably don't recommend actually writing in the book, right? Or is that okay too?
You're perfectly welcome to. There's not a ton of room in the book to write. And I think I'm going to be creating some later on that will be small excerpts of this. So there's more of a journaling opportunity. Because I know some people like that. They like to take one book with them. They don't want to have, a bunch of things. And you can get Level Up as an ebook and have it on your phone and take it to the park with a notebook and have at it.
Cool. That's cool. So that gives us opportunity there to journal in whatever way we work. But talk to me about the connection between writing and gratitude.
Mhm.
How are those connected? Because I know that I find that absolutely connects me, but you probably have some science or some practice behind it with your clients that really shows that really matters.
So gratitude is like kind of the research thing that they've absolutely been able to prove supports feelings of happiness. So there's been all sorts of, since positive psychology emerged, there have been all sorts of studies. There are probably, like 8 things that they've been able to replicate over and over again. And one of them is gratitude. And gratitude is just amazing. People who practice gratitude exercise longer than people who don't practice gratitude. People who practice gratitude are healthier. They're better able to achieve their goals. All of us have a negativity bias. It's just kind of the way we're built. And so our brains just go towards the negative. And so if you give a speech and 100 people tell you it was a great speech, and one person says to you, "Gal, I didn't like that part," you are going to hold on to the "Gal, I didn't like that part." And that is going to irk you for not just weeks, but years. Gratitude is an antidote to this. So gratitude gets your brain going opposite to the negativity effect. So instead of thinking about the worst thing that happens, you're thinking about the best things that happen. Writing solidifies this. So, it's one thing to think about it, but it's another thing actually to put it into writing. And so practicing gratitude journaling, which is where the Post-it note comes in. You can have a stack of Post-it notes by your bed, write down 3 things you're grateful for on one Post-it note at the end of every day or at the beginning of the next day, and you're done. You can bump up your feelings of gratitude if you not just write about what you're grateful for, but why you're grateful for it. What makes you happy about it? We spend a lot of times thinking about why we're upset about stuff. This is why this irked me. And we talk about, why did this irk me? Why was this wrong? Why did this person hurt me? But what about thinking about what went right? Why did it go right? Why did this make me happy? Why is this such a blessing? So that's one thing. And then now you can even supercharge your gratitude. So you're charging it up by writing it down. You're going to supercharge it by putting it in a letter to someone you're grateful for. So take a moment, grab a little card, and write a note to someone who's done something for you that you're grateful for. And that will supercharge your feelings of gratitude. And none of this is about how the other person responds. It's really about you connecting with your experiences throughout your day.
Wow. That is beautiful. So I know that I like to do that. I try my best to let people know when I'm grateful for them. I'll write a little letter. I'll send them an email longer. I might send them a private message on Facebook or a text message or something like that. And that absolutely does turbocharge my gratitude. Whenever I can connect what they did to the person, whenever I can be specific instead of just, hey, Rochelle, I'm really grateful for you. It's like, no, I'm grateful for you for the way that you explain all the science behind all of this for me so that I can make it even more concrete for me. So that's really, I find, and that just, I just got chills just saying that, right? Because I know, A, that's true. And B, it's like, I know that whatever you do with that is up to you. And it doesn't matter. It's about me sharing it. So that's really cool. I like that. I like that a lot.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that. But I know that's
Yeah.
part of your practice. And I really respond to your gratitude posts because what it does for me is it helps me kind of think about, okay, so what am I grateful for? So I feel like there's like a popcorn effect, it's like a bunch of popcorn. And so you pop up with your gratitude. I pop up with my gratitude. And then the next person pops up with their gratitude, and it catches just the same way negative stuff catches. But it's positive and it makes a good impact in the world, which I think is really helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so too. I love that popcorn effect. That is so powerful and so not practiced enough. So I need to be even more intentional about that. So tell me about your Mightier Than the Sword book. I haven't. This is the first that I'm kind of being introduced to it. So tell me about that. What you said it's a kid's book, but what's in it?
So it's a kid's book that features the stories of at least 40 different people who used writing to change the world. And so each chapter, see if I can find someone that you would know. So like Langston Hughes, each chapter not only has information about the person, but has little call outs about people that might have been their colleagues or contemporaries that also used writing to change the world. And there's over 100 of those. The people come from all different cultures and use writing in different ways. So I talk about Ada Lovelace, who wrote the very first computer code, because that is one way of writing that's really important. I talk about a couple of scientists who used writing to start to forward the natural history and to forward the nature conservancy movement. That's really important. I talk about political people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Sojourner Truth and their work of using writing. Both of those two, their writing comes to the forefront in their speaking. So it's their speaking that really changes the world. And my goal is to talk about people from all different parts of the world and all different subjects so that kids who are more science geeks or more, social change geeks see ways that they can use writing to change the world. So when we first conceived of the book, there was some talk of just including storytellers, but I didn't want to do that because so many kids are not storytellers. So many kids are more interested in the hard sciences or the social sciences. And it's important for them to see what other people have done. And so one of my favorite stories is Sophie Cruz, who is a little girl who wrote a letter to the Pope about, there's a picture of her in the Pope, an illustration. She wrote a letter to the Pope asking him to deal with immigration because her parents were immigrants and could not go back to Mexico to see her grandparents because they would be deported. And she wanted this to change. So she wrote a letter to the Pope at 5 years old to get a change. Malala Yousafzai, who's her because she won the Nobel Peace Prize. She's advocated for rights for girls to go to school. Hundreds and thousands of girls are not allowed to go to school each year because they're encouraged to become child brides. And she started writing against this in a blog. So I wanted to gather these stories in one place so kids would have access to them. And then every essay is accompanied by a writing exercise so that kids can start a blog or write a poem or, write a letter. Even there's one that has kids write a law, because anybody can write a law. You don't have to be a representative.
Politician.
You don't have to be a politician to write a law. Who knew? Anybody can write a law. So I have them kind of think like, what law would you write, and who would you send it to, and how would you get that into practice? So that
sounds like something that adults should be doing as well, because that sounds to me like we could kind of refine and refire our youthful exuberance about something that maybe we're interested in, just like you're doing for science, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's good in that way, because I think it introduces readers to a bunch of people that they might not know about. I really worked hard to find people. I mean, there are definitely people who are kind of core folks that you should know, like Martin Luther King Jr. And Langston Hughes, but there are definitely people that you may not know, and that are important for you to know, because they're part of our cultural history, and the global cultural history. And as we learn about them and learn about how they engaged with the world, we learn different ways that we can engage with the world.
Wow, that's powerful. So let's break this down a little bit. Let's get people started. But before we do, Rochelle, if people want to get more from you, where would you send them online that they can connect with you more?
Come to my website, rightnowcoach.com, WRITE, nowcoach.com, and sign up for my tips. It's right on the homepage. It's an easy thing for you to do, and you'll get tips every week on writing a better book and improving your practices.
There you go. So rightnowcoach.com is the website. I get Rochelle's weekly tips many weeks, not all weeks. I don't read anything every week. I wish I did, but I don't. I read it many times though, and they're always challenging and interesting and helpful for me. So with that, other than signing up for that, how do people get started just with the writing practice, Rochelle?
So I think one of the most powerful things you can do is morning pages. That's a Julia Cameron practice from 100 years ago. And that's just writing 3 sloppy pages a day about anything. It can be just a brain dump. It can be an idea dump. I'm not sure if your listeners are people who write for a living or who want to write for a living, but if anybody wants to write for a living or wants to write as part of their work, morning pages can be great, because it can be a way to dump all of your ideas and throw them into a notebook. And then once a week, you can go back with a highlighter and highlight some of your ideas. And maybe some of your ideas are going to lead to something. After many years of doing morning pages, I developed a little morning page practice. So I have a couple of things that I also do. I do gratitude. So I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And I always try to bump that up by thinking about, why am I grateful for that? I also do intentions. So what is my intention for the day? And I try to write intentions in present tense. So kind of like they've already happened. At the end of the day, I'm going to have written 3 chapters of whatever, or I'm going to have written a summary of what I've been studying about brood parasites. So I kind of have an idea of what I'm going to do. And then I like to write kind of a simple vision statement. So one of the exercises I always give to my clients is the best possible self exercise, where you fast forward 5 years, you write about yourself in the future as if everything is gone as well as possible, but you write it in the present tense. So I always have clients do this when they come to me. A short way to do it is to write just 2 or 3 sentences in the present tense every single day. So if you're a person who's maybe struggling to exercise, I am on a regular exercise path. I am eating really healthy. So these vision statements are just like key ways of kind of keying yourself into better practices. And then I always end with some sort of an incantation, some sort of a positive mantra that I can carry throughout the day. So these little practices kind of benefit my morning page. They make my morning pages a little bit better. Because sometimes morning pages can just get into a little grumpiness or crankiness about the day. And so making sure that I finish with a little gratitude and intention, vision, an incantation helps me to just kind of put my little stamp on the day. And
And
yeah,
yeah, I think it also gives those of us that struggle with a blank page
yeah,
something to start with.
yes, yes. And on days when you don't have a lot of time, if all you do is write down what you're grateful for and what you're intending to do that day, that can be really helpful. I'm a big bullet journaler, so you could also, if you're a journaler, then you're writing down what you're going to do for the day can be the key to getting stuff done. You could just use that as your to-do list and you go right from there into your day. And it doesn't have to be this complicated, oh, I need a fancy journal with washi tape and little stickers that let me track everything I do. You don't need all that. You just need one 10-cent notebook.
Invest 10 cents, friend. Listen to Rochelle. Get started journaling. Get started just writing down a couple sentences. If you're listening to this, I also encourage you to get to know Rochelle Melander more. Go to rightnowcoach.com. That's WRITENOW coach.com. Check it out. And don't forget about her book, Level Up. If you're struggling to journal, there's lots in there that you can do, lots there. And if you've got kids or you want to feel more kid-like, I also encourage you to get Mightier Than the Sword. Rochelle, this was awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thanks for having me. It was great.